Well, we're going to start with your dad. If you would just give us a sense for how you and Gloria came to call this church home, because it was just a couple of years ago, right?
Yes, it was. Going back, we were hurt in a church a long time ago. And for many years after the second hurt in the same church, which is more of his testimony, we just kind of drifted from church to church. I kind of made up my mind I wasn't ever going to get involved in a church again. I may go visit a church, but I'm not going to get involved. I'm just not going to let that happen to me again. And we were sitting either in our house or at Ron Lee's, and Ron Lee invited my wife and I to this church. Of course, I declined the first few weeks, but my wife came, and I believe it was the Christmas special was the first night I came to this church. And I was so moved by the sermon. It was the birth of Christ. And when Pastor Dave put the mud on his shirt to show you how dirty the stable was, I'd heard that story so many times in my life, but never put it in that perspective. And I was welcomed here. People came up and talked to me. I felt like family. I felt like I was back home again. And I've been coming here ever since. Yeah. And the things I see moving forward in this church is how God can bless me and my wife to come here for almost 2 years. And on the outside, he gets my son and his family here. Yeah. That's the greatest thing in the world right there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Roi, why don't you go ahead and share your story? It's a bit longer, but I think it's important, for you to share. And you're going to go back to childhood.
Yes. This will take back. It goes back to, we were trying to figure it out. I think it goes back to, either 1984 or 85. And my dad was saying, we went to a particular church. My parents took us there. I was about 9 years old at the time, and I knew nothing about drums, music, nothing like that. And very quickly, this church, we had a drummer that was there, and it grabbed my attention really fast. I would sit up in the front during the music, and then after the music, I'd go back and sit with my parents, but I sat there and watched this gentleman every time. And he noticed this, and at the end of one of the services, he brought me up to the front, had me sit down behind his kit, and showed me a couple things, and I picked it up really quick. And he said, "Man, come back next week. I'll show you a few more things." And this went on a couple weeks, and he was pretty surprised that he would show me something, and I would remember it week after week. I'd come back, he'd show me a few more things, and rather quickly, my parents figured out my talent in music and how much I enjoyed it and that. And by that Christmas, they bought me a drum kit, and I was 10 years old when I got that. That was 30 years ago now for me. So I filled in a few times. The guy that was our drummer happened to be our pastor's son at the time, and when he wasn't there, I'd fill in just a couple times while our pastor moved down to the south, and his family went with him with a change of their lifestyles. And I became the drummer in that church at about probably 11, maybe 12 years old. I was the only drummer in this church. And this went on for a while, and music's always been a driving force in my life. It's always, I'm 40 right now. I still practice drums every day at my house. I went all the way through high school band. I marched a year of drum and bugle corps through a whole summer. I met my wife in marching band. We got married 17 years ago. So music's always been a big part of my life. Well, while we were dating, I was 19 years old, and what my dad had spoke on is I go to church one morning, and this was a different pastor by then, and he comes up to me and he asked me to wear a necktie, and I had a shirt on like I wear right now, just something like this, and I said, I can't really wear a necktie. I'm kind of uncomfortable with a necktie on. And he said, well, I'm going to ask you not to play drums then if you're not going to wear a necktie and fit to our profile. And I asked him, are you serious? And he goes, yeah. Well, at this same time, I had brought my own drum kit. So I had a kit similar to what I brought in back here, and I had to sit in the pews back here and watch as nobody played, and everybody stared at me for this whole service because I wouldn't go up and play the drums. So following the service, the next week came around, we went back to church, and he came up and he said the same thing. He says, if you're not wearing a necktie, you're not going to be part of our music service. And this was after about 8 or 9 years of playing every Sunday night, and Wednesday evening. And so this hurt my family enough that we decided to pull away from that church. You know, I wasn't fitting to their profile for some reason with all that we've done at that point. So we removed my kit. We pulled out of that church, and it was a few years after that's when my wife and I got married. We jumped around. We counted approximately 6 churches that we tried. We happened to go to one. We felt a little bit comfortable in there, and a few services into there, my youngest one was just a little bit, he was a baby, so he was just a little bit fussy. And someone came up to us, asked us to leave and go in the back room and watch it on the monitors. I thought, man, geez. And, you know, it kind of hurts your feelings a little bit when you have something like this happen. And we've been to a few other churches, other ones, those are, you know, we've been to some other churches that just I don't think fit our profile. I didn't think the music moved me very much. I didn't think the sermons moved me very much. And, you know, music's that's always been a big part of my life. Continuing to try to touch with people with music. I began teaching music at Vicksburg High School, where my kids both go. I've been doing that for 5 years now. I lead their percussion program down there. I have an absolute blast doing that. All these kids really look up to me. They learn a lot from me. They get a lot out of that. And so I've always tried to stay in touch with what drives me. So about a year ago, I think it was around last Christmas, my mom and dad invited us to come down here to, I believe it was a Christmas Eve service. And we ended up sitting over here somewhere. And I remember sitting there and thinking, I go, you know, this is a pretty nice music department here. I really enjoyed the music. And then I really enjoyed the service, you know, Pastor Dave, listening to him. And then just on and off a couple times over the last year we visited. And then probably about 2.5 months ago, we started coming a little bit more on a regular basis. And realized that Andy and I had a connection. He teaches at a school, teaching music as well. And then, so him and I got together a little bit and decided to see if we can fit myself into this music program here. So I played 2 services now, a couple weeks ago, and then last week I played. And I can't tell you how much of a blessing it is that I've been invited a part of this music service. I absolutely love where this music's moving. I love where this church seems to be, and we feel very welcome. It's been a great experience for us. So
We're glad you're home, too.
Thank you.
I just have one more question for your dad. If you would, just tell us what it means to have your son back home with you.
Can't put that in words. It's just another blessing to be at home, and now my son's home with me.
Thank you both.
Thank you.